What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Shut Up.
Keep going.
I'm Sydnee Goodman.
I'm Kate Franklin.
And this is a show where we explore our internet
Curiosities.
I also hit my mic a lot, so sorry. I'm going to try not to do that. It's just so satisfying to adjust. I like it. Why don't we just dive right into it? Let's freaking dive. I'm at the high dive. I'm at the top. I'm how many meters? I'm 3 meters high, and I'm about to just do a somersault double flippy.
Is that a lot of meters?
Butterfly man.
Yeah, it's a lot of meters.
I have no idea.
Okay.
Today we're talking about Lisa Frank.
Good topic.
Were you a big Lisa Frank fan?
I was, but only because I knew this girl Lisa Potvin, and I was like, they have the same name.
Ooh. So if you don't know what Lisa Frank is, it is a brand. It's really hard to explain the aesthetic. It's like rainbow animals with really big eyes.
Yeah, it's like early 2000s, 90s even, dare I say.
Like holographic.
Yeah. They
had a lot of stickers and binders and notebooks and stuff. Did they have anything else? They had t-shirts, right?
Yeah, it was a whole aesthetic.
Yeah. You could probably look it up now, and I would imagine that it's probably pretty popular.
It still is a thing.
But we're going to talk about kind of the rise and fall of Lisa Frank, because I feel like it's only recently come back in vogue.
Okay, I'm so excited.
It's kind of ironic, to be honest. Like juicy sweatsuits. So, Lisa Frank is a real woman. I kind of assumed it was a pseudonym, to be honest, but it's a real lady. An artist who founded the school supply brand in 1979. Her husband, James Green, was CEO and had a reputation at the company's headquarters in Tucson, Arizona. Also, why is that not pronounced Tucson?
I don't know.
He had a reputation that he was, quote, an unfaithful monster with a cocaine problem, and employees feared he would destroy the company.
I'm not surprised.
It does kind of
Can I say that?
Why is it not surprising for you?
Just because it has Coke energy.
It
really does. It's just what I think is interesting is that so many of the things that I grew up with as an aesthetic, I now as an adult can kind of understand what was actually going on.
Yeah.
And I feel like Coke was rampant.
Yeah, I didn't realize how it was really they made us fear marijuana, but I feel like Coke was everywhere.
Yeah. Coke and eating disorders.
Eating disorders galore. Oh my gosh.
Weird money laundering.
I think that's still a thing.
That's true.
Have you looked back at pictures of celebrities from the early 2000s, 90s? And they are... Well, and I remember looking at that and being like, oh my gosh, they're so pretty.
Yeah.
And not thinking anything was wrong, but they were literally so not healthy.
I know. And as a little chubby kid, I was I can't stand for this. Meaning I can't stand for myself because all the celebrities are yay big. And that is, sorry, I always do this when I have a point.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have a point.
That is why... I don't know how you feel about Billie Eilish.
I really like her.
I think. Really like her. And I think she's such an amazing celebrity for girls to look up to, because it's and that's why I was a little disappointed in the whole Vogue thing. I just was Leading up to her new album, she posed for Vogue, and you know how she was famous for wearing her baggy clothes.
Yeah.
She wore lingerie, which I think is fine. I think it's fine. This is just a personal thing.
Yeah.
I just was slightly bummed out because something that I find that I liked about her was that she was about body acceptance and being this is how I want to be perceived. I don't want people to look at my, it's my decision. I loved that. Mm-hmm. I thought that was a really strong, interesting choice, because I feel a lot of times with body positivity, it's here's my entire body.
Yeah.
Instead of just being I don't really want to show you my body publicly.
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting. I've never really seen that.
I would agree.
So then she spoke about positivity in the kind of classic way. And I was Billie, no.
Yeah. So
but again, I don't mean to shame her. She looked amazing. I was
totally.
Good for you,
but I feel what I'm hearing you say is that you resonated with her decision to kind of omit her actual showing her body.
Yeah.
as a part of making a point.
Yeah. I thought it was a very strong point, and I found it. Oh my God.
I'm so happy. So before we started recording this episode, I was saying how I was sad because Simba usually hangs out with me, and he didn't cuddle with me this morning. I felt like he was mad, and so I'm really happy that he's here.
You're like so excited.
I'm so happy. Hi, babe.
Oh my God. I have to take a picture of this.
We'll have to include
that'll go on the image guide.
Yeah, in the image guide for today. No, but yeah, I don't know. I would. It's interesting that you brought that up though, because I would agree that I found it to be an out of character decision. And while to be honest, I hated looking at her outfits.
Oh, same.
I understood why, but her aesthetic, I just was like, oh, girl, like I can't look at this is such an ugly outfit. But I understood her choice and cool, whatever. But I would agree. I think that with her decision to pose in Vogue like that, it was something that just like read very off brand, I guess. And so like in a weird way, it like put this stem of disbelief where I was like, wait, like how authentic was all of that? Like it just like put in this kind of like, what? Like, I don't know. Like I liked you and your music, and I like you and your music because there's like such a like raw authenticity with it. And so for her to make a decision that felt so out of character for her brand.
Yeah.
And I say that because I think there's a clear distinction between me trying to say that I know Billie Eilish and the decisions Billie Eilish, the human, should be making, versus me saying like, this is the brand that she's established, and like it just felt kind of off brand.
Yeah. And I think just to tie it back to our version of celebrities, pop stars of growing up, why I like Billie Eilish is that like she's like famous based on her art and talent, which I find really exciting. I think it's a step forward. I hope we keep progressing in this way.
Well, and I think it's interesting that she's, and I know I just spent a lot of time being like, that was off brand, but I also think it was really smart and interesting that she like rose to fame and like became acclaimed for her music first.
Yeah.
And now she's like, oh yeah, this is what I look like, by the way.
Because like if you look at the pop stars of the early 2000s, it's like Epstein Island. Is that like is that terrible to say?
I think he did have an island, right?
No, no. I don't know if that's terrible to like relate Jeffrey Epstein, but it's like they all looked like they were 14
and playing up all of these like sexual
it was
fantasies.
So disturbing.
Yeah. Especially I feel like with all this the Free Britney movement that's been going on, and I feel like people have been doing deep dives into kind of more of like how she was groomed and like all that.
It's very
like,
sad.
But so Lisa Frank.
Sorry, the cocaine thing.
Well, so let's dive deeper into who is Lisa Frank, the lady behind the coked out stickers. She's from Bloomfield Hills, north of Detroit, and it's ranked in the top 5 wealthiest cities in America consistently. Her father was in the automotive industry. She was supported by her parents to pursue her interests, which were, quote, artistic and feminine. She went to the same elite prep school as Mitt and Anne Romney, where she started painting. And when she was 20, she started a plastic jewelry line called Sticky Fingers, which was which was picked up by Neiman Marcus in Bloomingdale's, and this collection inspired her to design stickers and buttons. Sticky Fingers, as like an early college student, makes me think of jizz.
Wait, what is Sticky Fingers in this sense?
That was the name of her plastic jewelry line.
Do you remember those little hands that were sticky?
Yeah, you'd get them at Chuck E. Cheese for like 5 tickets or whatever.
That's kind of horrifying now to think about.
They were probably like disease centers.
Do you know the ones that I was an obsessive little kid, and so I would always have like one of those that was like my thing that I loved, you know, those like little tubes that were like gels.
Yes. And you'd like put them on your wrist and stuff and like jack it off kind of.
Yes, no, exactly. So I was obsessed with them, and I was always like, woo! And then my sister, who was like in high school, or like she was older than me, she was like, you look deranged and like you're jacking everyone off.
You're just like, yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I was like, I love how this feels on my finger.
It's so funny though to think of like our parents had to watch us be like, this is great, I love it.
And our parents were just like,
they couldn't say anything. They were just like, oh my God.
How many little boys do you think their first masturbation experience was related to those things?
Honestly, probably like
everyone.
I hope that they had that experience. Like
it's kind of a Lisa Frank experience.
But like that feels like it's like that's what it was made for. Like,
yeah.
Also, what's the deal? Where did waterbeds go? My dad had a waterbed at some point.
My parents had a waterbed. Like, I think everyone's just like, I think it actually proved that it was really bad for your back.
Oh, so everyone's like, oh shit. Okay,
and also Edward Scissorhands popped them. Anyways. But anyways, so Lisa Frank got the rights for Betty Boop and Popeye and Mighty Mouse and would, quote, put like Betty Boop on a unicorn, she told the Daily. 1979 rolls around. She renames the company Lisa Frank Inc. and got her first $1 million order from Spencer Gifts at 25. 25?
It's kind of wild when, and this is being a pretentious art, like this is being pretentious. But like Lisa Frank, I wouldn't consider high art.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to think that she, like, you know, like it doesn't look technically very difficult. Like they're basically just like stylized doodles, right?
Yeah.
And it's just wild to think that she was just like, oh yeah. And then she built this like multi-million-dollar company off of just like the, like executing on an idea. And I actually think it's like really inspiring to just like, I feel like I talk myself out of things a lot where I'm like, oh, well, this is such a simple idea. Like if it was good, somebody else would have done it already, or it would already be like a successful thing. Like it's not really worth, like I like talk down to my ideas a lot like that. And so I don't know, I found it really inspiring to be like, well, no, this bitch like built this giant thing from like these doodles. Like it doesn't have to be complicated
and concise. I feel like are the keys to success.
Would completely agree. So she still sells her first $1 million order. This is interesting. So there's only 2 photos of Lisa Frank on the internet.
Ew.
And
I don't know why I don't like that.
Really? I respect the anonymity.
No, but I also respect it.
But so this was also, wait, let me also just say, I got this information from Jezebel. Mm-hmm. This whole article is based on a Jezebel like investigative journalism thing. Okay. I don't love Jezebel. Okay. I'm just going to say that. I think that they tend to paint a lot of their stories just feel like there's like a really heavy bias to them. And so I do feel like it's necessary to put that disclaimer out here because it talks a lot about her husband, who sounds like a pretty horrible dude. But I am presenting this and I feel like I need to let you know that I would presume that this was reported with bias.
Okay.
I think that's important.
Yeah.
But anyways, so there's only 2 photos of Lisa Frank on the internet, and on the Jezebel article, they had this like, you know how they put hyperlinks within the articles? And I was like, oh, I want to see the photos. And so I click it and it goes to a BuzzFeed article and they had the embedded images, and both images says they're no longer available.
Oh my God. Lisa Frank's like deep in the internet. Like,
yeah. But I did find a picture that was from the Lisa Frank newsletter in the Jezebel article. And I'm like 99% it's her. It'd be very weird if it wasn't, because it's like signed Lisa Frank.
I see.
But if she was really that paranoid, I guess she could have gotten like a model to stand in for her or something. So I don't know. Didn't have pictures to cross-reference. She really didn't like the spotlight, but also sounded a little bit self-important. Mm-hmm. Where there was like an anecdote about how, when I like pay for things with my credit card and somebody's like, oh my gosh, your name's Lisa Frank, like the brand or whatever. And she'd be like, oh yeah, funny that we have the same name. And then Jezebel was who was like, yeah, like sounds like she like thinks she's pretty important, doesn't she? I was like, oh, well, I don't know. That just sounds like something that happened to her. And she's like telling us about it. I don't know.
It's like if it's like Leonardo DiCaprio, everyone's like, oh, you have the same name as Leonardo DiCaprio. It's just like, it's like a famous name.
Yeah.
Just like Kate Franklin.
So people who worked for her talked mostly about her appearance, and that, quote, she was very beauty focused and like kind of on that train that we've talked about before of just like feeling like she needs to like stay young and thin and XYZ. And so she was really into appearances. And she was described as, quote, a very passionate lady, although a little manic and not always all there, by someone who worked in the creative department for 2 years around the time of Frank and Green's divorce. So spoiler alert, she gets divorced from her husband.
But okay. Can I interject with one piece of social criticism?
Please do. I'd love it.
Why do artists have to be normal, sane, functioning people? I'm sorry. Like, it's like you want an artist to be a crazy person. It's way more interesting.
Yeah.
It's like this woman is creating like multicolored like leopards for a living. Like, I'm not really wanting to like have a cup of Starbucks with her.
Yeah.
And like discuss like the news. Like I just
I would expect
that just
her to
really
be zany.
bothers me when people are like, and they're crazy, and I'm like, good. Like, I don't know. And I feel like I said this about Elon Musk, and I still stand by that it's like, I don't care that he's a freak. Like, it's like this guy's like trying to I don't know why I brought Elon Musk. Any famous person that's weird, I'm like, okay,
like they're eccentric, as long as you're not like hanging out on Jeffrey Epstein's island.
Then,
I mean,
like, let's not go to that island, friends. But
or like, don't be like dating children.
But even, and this is not condoning drug use at all, but it's just like don't fucking judge people. Like, an artist's life is like very torturous, and
totally.
Like, if you're a creative, like, you have certain emotional receptors that are very sensitive, and life is tough. So
well, and I think not to get like overly pedantic, but like, don't judge anybody who's has like an addiction, like illness and problem, because like you just don't understand what they're going through. And I don't think anybody actually wants to be in a position where they are dependent on a substance. Like, I don't think anybody actually wants that deep down. It's like, don't judge people.
I also feel like, not to just shit on the time we grew up in, but like, that's what's so interesting. I feel like drugs were so like, if you do that, you are so bad. And now we're not that we're like, yeah, you should go do drugs, but we're like more understanding and like willing to like talk about mental health. Yeah. Which is so interesting, because I feel like drug use back then was like way more rampant. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know.
No, I think it was. But I also would be curious if maybe now like people just don't talk about like, if maybe it's like we talk about mental health more, but we don't talk about drug. Do you know? I don't know. I don't know if maybe people are just, I don't know statistics around that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is interesting. So Lisa Frank was a boomin', the company, not the person. At its peak in the late 90s, it raked in over $60 million a year in sales.
Wow.
And I think what's so interesting about that is just like, they're not selling like high priced items, right? It's like a pack of stickers.
Yeah.
And like they're raking in that much. Also, I need to tell a story about, I invited this girl that I did not like to my first grade birthday party because I knew up to this point she had given really good gifts.
Love.
And she got me a pack of Lisa Frank stickers. And like, not to be like, you should give me a bigger gift, but she always gave really big gifts, and she just gave me stickers. And I was like, bitch, I don't even want you here.
Yeah.
Anyways, so 2013, which was when this article was written, things were not going great. And I'm not sure if it's like actually still around or like what the deal is, because I know that the factory, like the headquarters, isn't there anymore. Like it is, but it's like an abandoned building sort of a situation. So, but then when I went to their website, like Lisa Frank does sell things still, and like you can buy their stuff. So I would assume they're still around in some capacity. I couldn't really figure out.
She just did a makeup line with Morphe.
Oh, interesting.
How do I know that? Great question. Well, no, she always comments on Casey Musgraves pictures.
Oh, interesting.
And I'm a huge Casey Musgraves fan. And so I was like, oh my God, Lisa Frank's still around. And I saw that.
Yeah, no, she's like around. So it seems like she's still around. I just don't really understand in what capacity.
Yeah.
And a lot of the articles, I feel like 2013, it must have been really surprising that it wasn't doing well, because it felt like there were a lot of articles written in 2013 specifically that were like, everything's failing. What's going on?
I love that we love the downfall of childhood beloved things.
It's I know. We think it's like really edgy.
Frank.
So what happened?
What happened?
From an employee, quote, "It was the silliest setup I've ever seen. Of course, from the outside, it's colorful. You've got the rainbow, the stars, the hearts on the building, the statue of the panda, but inside was like an abusive, alcoholic home."
Oh, no.
A former employee called it the, quote, rainbow gulag.
Oh, no. That's not
Former employee, quote, "Lisa Frank is notorious in Tucson as the world's shittiest employer. There was apparently an emphasis on productivity." And remember, this is a creative workplace. This is supposed to be like, we're like designing these like happy stickers of like rainbow pandas eating rainbow flavored ice cream. Like, and so the office was supposed to be silent and coworkers weren't allowed to talk to each other.
What? Is this true?
Apparently, they got it confirmed by like multiple employees.
Oh my God.
There was management secretly and illegally recorded phone calls. There was a bi-monthly publication called Frankly Speaking, which I think is like actually a really cute name, that informed employees how they should act and had information on how they were expected to interact with the CEO, James Green. No visitors were allowed, including family members. Penalty for any violations ranged from verbal abuse to name calling to screaming to automatic termination to even more bizarre restrictions. And they didn't offer severance.
Here's the thing. Why? Like, I just feel like that shit always comes out.
Yeah. I think though, like at that point, I don't know that shit was coming out. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like the employers were like, hey, no one will know. But I feel like now that it was like the emergence of social media that I think really, for better or for worse, because like I don't know how much we've talked about cancel culture on here. I feel like a decent amount, but like social media is a place where people bitch about things, sometimes rightfully so, sometimes maybe not.
Yeah.
And so I think that like it's created a space where employers that are pulling shit like this wouldn't last very long because it would come out. But before that, like people didn't really have an outlet. What are you gonna like write a letter to your congressman?
Yeah. I don't know.
So one time after discovering someone left the office 10 minutes early, an enraged Green, the CEO, and husband of Lisa Frank, instructed the warehouse manager to put chains and padlocks on all the downstairs doors so that, quote, the staff can't escape.
What the fuck?
Can you imagine?
That's like hell. That's like hellish just because of what their product is.
Right?
Yeah.
Like what? Well, it's just interesting because it is just such a juxtaposition of their product. So why didn't people just leave? I mean, there was high churn rate for employees, but the company allegedly often failed to give promised severance packages, fought unemployment benefits, and former employees had to sue for their final paychecks or sales commission, as evidenced by public records of numerous civil judgments entered against Lisa Frank Inc. Also, a series of lawsuits from local contractors and builders who claimed they hadn't been paid for the $4 million worth of work on the corporate headquarters. According to Susan Russo, who worked as the sales and marketing manager, quote, over 80 people walked out the door between February 2003 and December 2004, most without notice because they had been treated so poorly and they just were like, I'm fed up, I'm leaving.
Oh.
It's like very astounding, and it's interesting because like, so when I was doing this research, I was so like shocked.
Yeah.
But now that I'm reading and remembering, this is like people's lives. Like that had to have been so stressful, and it's like really unfortunate that this thing that like we all loved was causing so much pain for all of these people.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I felt with my last job.
That's horrible.
It was just like all these people were like, oh my God, it must be a dream to work here. And I was like, I feel like I'm in hell.
You know, I relate to that. I relate to that with some of my former employers. So everyone seemed to have a problem with James Green specifically. I feel like people were kind of like, oh, like Lisa Frank, she's like kind of a weirdo, but everyone was like, fuck James Green.
Oh no.
So he didn't seem to be very favorable. I'm sure I didn't look it up. Actually, now I'm like,
Oh my God, he looks like a psychopath.
Wait, I just actually
found him.
Images.
The pictures of her look crazy too.
Wait, that's so funny. So that picture, the one with her and the turtleneck, that's like the picture that was that's one of the only okay.
Wow.
Yeah, he looks like somebody who would like yell at people and do a lot of coke.
Yeah, big time.
And, like think very highly of himself. Okay. So he started work. Like, what's the deal with him? Let's talk about him. We know he's Lisa Frank's husband. Wasn't always that way though. They didn't start the company together because remember she started. I mean, I guess you could be married at that point, but she started like when she was in college. But he started working there in 1982 as the company's first in-house illustrator and designer. Then he started dating Lisa Frank late 1983, early 1984, and started to move up the corporate ladder. I wonder if those events were related. Is there a correlation? Then he was named president and CEO in December of 1992. Frank and Green got married in October 1994 in what was described as a, quote, extravagant affair. I wonder if it was like overly cut. Like, I want to know what their wedding looked like. Like, was that her aesthetic, or do you think she just like went through a phase and then it was like very lucrative. And so she kept it.
I'm sure that's what it was. I'm sure, you know what it was like that Barbie like fake palace vibe that was early. Not like it's actual like Barbie, Malibu Dream House vibes.
I could see that. So after they had kids, Frank worked from home and came into the office every once in a while, but Green actually ran the show. Like, oh wow, people are quoted as saying like, yeah, sometimes she's like pop in and see what's going on, but she like wasn't really super involved from their perspective.
Wow.
He sounds like an abusive manager. So in 2005, 16 people submitted affidavits in a lawsuit against Green. He had fits of rage and load profanity laden outbursts. I don't know what I meant, but he had profanity laden
outbursts.
Maybe, yeah. While publicly berating people, including Frank. So he'd like embarrass her in front of her employees at her namesake company. We don't like that at all. He was witnessed as throwing chairs and other objects, said to have had a Napoleon complex and described as a, quote, relatively short man who reeked of cologne.
Oh, cool.
I think it's funny that they're like interviewing all these people who had these horrible experiences and like these are the details that are coming out. They're like, yeah, and he was short. Write that down. He also smelled like cologne. Like
that's honestly like so real though. I feel like when someone reeks of cologne and they're shitty, like you'll always remember that.
Yeah.
I also feel like don't throw chairs. I feel like throwing chairs is like something is wrong.
It just feels like a lot of physical effort. Like there's so much time that passes when you're throwing a chair that you could like stop yourself. Like it's like you have to get up out of the chair or like walk towards the chair, right? And then you have to like get down to its level. Like think of like how awkward the shape of a chair is. Like it's not like it's like you're taking like a memory card, I don't know why you'd have to put it around, and like tossing it. It's like no, you're like getting to the chair's level. Like you need to like lift with your legs, not with your back. Like there's so many moments where you could just be like, I should put this down.
We don't need to be throwing chairs.
No, we do not. So then the two divorced, and it wasn't surprising. Frank was frightened of Green and was a victim of verbal abuse, which I know we're like, ha ha ha, but that's like for real, not like, fuck you, dude, get out of here. Green moved out of their home he moved out of their home in June 2005. And Frank started getting more involved in the business again, but they were both still running it together. So like, he was still the president and CEO, and she was just like, wait, like, I'm involved too.
Wait, why couldn't she kick him out?
I don't know how the logistics of that work, but I feel like if he's president and CEO, like, on, like, legally, what power does she really have? She's just owner of the company. Like, does she have power over both the president and the CEO? What I feel like, based on watching a lot of great business shows that I watch on CNBC, that she should have retained like being president and he was CEO so that she would didn't. Yeah. But I also wonder, I don't remember how long they were married, if it's something like a legality where they were married long enough or maybe didn't have a prenup and like he legally owned half the business because of that.
Get a prenup.
After they divorced, the company had plans to expand with a Fantastic World of Lisa Frank theme park, which I feel like would have been so fantastically camp and just like,
oh my god, I would have
so fun. A clothing line and TV show, but instead Lisa Frank spent most of the latter half of the 2000s in litigation. There was a list of like 9 lawsuits of Lisa Frank versus James Green and vice versa.
Ew, what a psycho.
And then a few with Roulette, who I think I read was a VP, but this was such a long article that at that point I was like, I don't even want to go back and look. She was a high-ranking employee.
Ew.
I guess against Frank. And she was also Green's right-hand like person. And I thought there was going to be more drama, but that's kind of where we're at with Lisa Frank. You can still buy their stuff and they have a website. And in 2013, they started a short-lived collaboration with Urban Outfitters, but it's kind of just like, their divorce just kind of like fucked the business and
men like that.
To be okay, I am not defending him. I think we're really clear. I don't like this guy. But let's say the divorce didn't happen, or even let's say it was amicable and he was like, fine, take the business, I'll like do whatever else. And so she's just running it now, right?
Yeah.
Lisa Frank has never changed anything. Like it's always the same thing. It's just like new versions of the same aesthetic. And I think now it's like the 90s and that nostalgia pop sort of a thing is back, but like that's like a pretty recent thing. And I just feel like, I don't know, could Lisa Frank have like sustained itself if like this entire time, even sans like all of these lawsuits?
Probably. Well, okay. I actually don't know because I think I'm not super well versed in like toddler aesthetics, but I do remember like when I was babysitting, like in the past, like I was kind of surprised that the aesthetics have not changed that much.
Oh, interesting. Like kids still really like that look.
Like we may have grown out of it, but I think like rainbows and I think has never.
It's like timeless for
if you think
certain
about
age bracket. That's a good point. That's a really good point. Like I wonder if when we were that age, if older kids were into Lisa Frank too, or was it just because we were that age bracket?
I don't know. It might have. I don't know. I don't know. But I will say, in her defense of like not changing anything, I low-key like respect the shit out of it because I hate when brands that are very aesthetic for one reason try to rebrand for the current moment. But then it's like, then you look back in like a year and you're like, why did you do that?
But you're also like, what is your brand idea? Like, who are you? You're just a generic brand now. Because I do think that usually when they do that rebrand, it's so driven by like trying to like stay relevant and like stay hip and cool. And so it's not really coming from like a genuine, authentic place. And you can kind of sniff that out.
Yeah, and I think it would be different with Lisa Frank if it was fashion, because I feel like Betsy Johnson was a kind of a similar era aesthetic, like kind of gaudy.
She was around for a really long time. Did you know that?
She's still around.
Well, no, her line is not.
I just saw Betsy Johnson's shoes recently.
So Betsy Johnson was bought by Steve Madden.
Oh.
But she is working on a capsule. She's working on a collection. I don't know why I said capsule collection. She's working on a collection actually right now. I just saw an article about it.
Well, I feel like that era,
but not for Betsy not for Betsy Johnson the brand. She's just as like, Betsy Johnson the person is making, because she left when Steve Madden
bought her.
Well, I don't know if it was immediately.
Yeah. But I feel like that fashion aesthetic like kind of went out.
Yeah.
But like with Lisa Frank, like she's like selling like stickers and like coloring books. So
like it's almost like less not commitment, but I feel like it's like, how much is a pack of stickers? It's like not like where I feel like if you're buying like a Betsy Johnson dress, those were A, expensive, and B, it's like you're committing to like wearing this like gaudy outfit. And I don't say I liked Betsy Johnson, so I'm not saying gaudy in like a bad way. It's just like very like garish. I keep using these really negative words.
No. I just had I had a few Betsy Johnson things. I was like I like couldn't afford one of her dresses, or like my parents wouldn't buy me one. Like right on, like don't buy me one of those. But now dating Caleb, like I was so curious about what his childhood was like what he was like, and he has a younger sister.
He wore Betsy Johnson.
No, but he has a younger sister who like is only younger than me, so I can kind of trace what their life was like through her, because I also had a female experience. And for her bat mitzvah, she wore a Betsy Johnson dress, and I was like, bitch, I know who you are. I was like, I can see you.
I remember I had a Betsy Johnson bikini.
Oh my god!
And I bought it in high school, actually.
Wow.
I bought it in high school, and I remember, dude, it's so not it. It looked like wallpaper. Like it was like this like white floral wallpaper sort of a thing, but you know the wallpaper where there's like a line, there's like two small lines, and then there's like flowers in between. It was like that, but then there was like black in it somehow, and then like there were black like ties on the side that were these like really elaborate looking bows, kind of like if you think of like, you know, those like the drapery that has bows on either side for like ceremonies. It was really ugly. But I have to say though, like I'm like looking at them, I like kind of am down. It's like coming back.
I like liked the style.
I feel like it was like around the same aesthetic. It was adjacent aesthetic to like Lamb, Love Angel Music Baby, Gwen Stefani's brand. Gwen Stefani's brand was skewed a little bit more edgy, but still a little cutesy, where I feel like Betsy Johnson was kind of like this mix of like almost like 80s glam and like rock and roll sort of a thing.
Yeah, I feel like I like it because it's like slightly like It almost has like a touch of like 50s vintage.
Yes.
Which I feel like never goes out of style.
Yes.
I didn't really like any of her edgy stuff, I have to say. I liked her like frilly, like floral shit.
Yeah, I like the frilliness. But so that is Lisa Frank.
Wow. Who would have thought?
Who would have thought?
I mean, again, I see cocaine when I see those images now. Well, mine doesn't relate to this at all.
Oh, cool.
So
very different.
This is a little hefty, and I'll try to just get through it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I feel like I was trying to make mine short and I didn't do that.
No. It's not for lack of time. It's just for the
like dense
vibes.
Okay.
But I have been watching this new series that I'm obsessed with, and I highly recommend. It's a little bit like heady, but a long time ago I did a Century of the Self topic about like the founding of modern marketing. Do you remember that?
Yes.
It was a while ago. And it was based on a series by Adam Curtis, who's like this British filmmaker. Mm-hmm. And he just released a new series earlier this year that I highly recommend called Can't Get You Out of My Head. I almost forgot it. It's called
Can't Get You Out of My Head.
Love Kylie. Minogue.
Wait, is that who that is?
Kylie Minogue, yeah.
Oh my gosh, I didn't
She
even know.
rocks. I love her.
It's a good song.
And it's basically about like tracking. It sounds so boring now compared to your topic. I'm sorry.
You haven't actually said anything yet, so I can't even make a judgment.
It's about tracking like emotion or political and social progress from the last 50 years through an emotional lens.
Interesting.
Which actually
I think
like
that sounds really
slaps.
Interesting. Yeah.
It was like he basically was like, yeah, I've like made all these documentaries about like sociology and da. But I was just curious about like how that like weighs on like mass emotion. And so that's what the thing is. That's what the whole documentary is about.
Interesting.
So he gives all these like very like specific stories and he interlaces all of them. And then it's kind of beautiful because it's like he's not making a specific point. He's just like, here's a story.
Yeah.
And you can kind of all relate them. But that's a very long-winded way. One of them was about the Maoist revolution in China, which I realized I don't know anything about.
I don't think I do either, to be honest.
And I'm not going to talk about that, but I was researching it and I was like, there's no way I can condense this to like
that's so funny topic. Because there's been like 2 or 3 instances where I've had like Chinese history, like historical events that I've wanted to talk about, but I feel like you need so much context and like it's like so dense that I've just like abandoned hope because I'm like, ugh.
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to talk about Mao's wife, Jiang Qing, who is like literally so fascinating. Mao's wife was a Singaporean, is that what you say? Actress and singer. And she basically was like spurned by her co-star. And she was like, so I'm going to rise to power and crush you.
Oh my gosh.
So she then married Mao and became like literally like one of the most powerful people in the world and like imprisoned her co-star.
I like wanted to say like good for her, but also I'm like, oh.
No, it was like pretty intense. But a lot of it is about her. But anyways, regardless, I was just like researching Maoist shit. And then I came across that image. You know it. Of the guy in front of the tanks. It's called Tank Man. The image.
Man.
It's like one of the most famous images. So here's the thing I didn't know. Well, this was a sub-article under Life's Greatest Mysteries.
Oh, okay.
Because basically no one ever found out who this man was.
Wow. Okay.
So that's what I'm going to talk about.
Is it because he got rolled over by a tank?
He did not.
Oh, that's good. We have confirmation.
So quick backstory. The image will pop up so you'll know what I'm talking about. It's very important.
Okay.
So if you're editing this, please.
I am editing this.
So it's a very famous image, and it depicts the Tiananmen Square protests, which happened in Beijing in 1989. Really, really fast. Basically what it was it's also known as the June 4th incident in China. And they were student-led demonstrations in Tiananmen Square in Beijing. And they led to what is known as the Tiananmen Square Massacre, where troops armed with assault rifles accompanied by tanks fired at the demonstrators and those trying to block the military's advance into the square. They started on April 15th, and they were suppressed on June 4th forcibly, and the government declared martial law and sent in the People's Liberation Army to occupy parts of central Beijing. Estimates of the death toll vary from several hundred to several thousand, with thousands more wounded.
I'm not going to get political, but I will just say for a second, I feel like we are so lucky to not be in a situation where that's like what happens. And I feel like when people are like, oh, I feel like my freedom and liberties are being taken away. We are not a perfect country. I think we can all agree that. But like, we're not that. No. So I'm like, okay, like I can manage, we can make some adjustments, but like, wow, that's horrible. Yeah, oh my gosh. Thank God
our government isn't open firing on student protesters. Like, are you kidding? No.
That's so sad. Oh my goodness.
So what caused these protests was the death of the pro-reform communist general secretary. I'm not going to try to pronounce his name because I'm going to butcher it.
Okay.
No, I'll try. Hu Yaobang. In April 1989, and this was amid backdrop of rapid economic development and social changes in post-Mao China that reflected anxieties among the people and political elite. And these reforms, it's interesting. So it sounds like it's like, yay, like this is good, but it was like only benefiting like the elite.
Gotcha.
Common grievances of the time were inflation, corruption, limited preparedness of graduates for the new economy. Can relate.
Wait, remind me, what year is this?
1989.
Okay.
And restrictions on political participation.
Yeah, no kidding.
So this is like a super important event.
Yeah.
It's like a watershed event, as they call it. Because the reaction to the protests set limits on political expression in China, limits that have lasted up to the present day.
Yeah, that when you said 1980, that's like so recent.
I know.
Fuck. And I think that's like what's really frustrating for many reasons, because obviously you don't like to hear about like a huge massacre. There's like these people were just starting their lives and they like would be doing their thing right now. You know what I mean? Like it's just so fucking heartbreaking.
I know. And they just wanted a better life.
Yeah.
That's what's so sad about it. And so just this is like for context of why this is important. So remembering the protests is widely associated with questioning the legitimacy of the Communist Party rule, and it remains one of the most sensitive and widely censored topics in China today, which I didn't know.
So my dad sent me an article on June 4th about Tiananmen Square this year, and it was the first time I'd ever heard of it.
Yeah, I've always seen this picture, but I feel like I never like really deep dove.
Yeah.
Which is the point of this podcast.
Woo.
So the incident of Tank Man, they call him Tank Man of Tiananmen. That's like the image name.
Yeah.
So it took place on the northeast edge of Tiananmen Square shortly after noon on June 5th, 1989, the day after of the violent crackdown. And so Tank Man, as he's called, stood in the middle of the wide avenue directly in the path of a column of approaching Type 59 tanks. Stuart Franklin, that's my last name, who was on assignment for Time magazine, told the New York Times, quote, "At some point, shots were fired and the tanks carried on down the road towards us, leaving Tiananmen Square behind until it was blocked by one lone protester. He wore a white shirt and black trousers, and he held 2 shopping bags," which I just love that about it. Like if you see videos, he has like 2 shopping bags.
Yeah.
It's very endearing. As the tanks came to a stop, the man gestured towards the tanks with one of the bags. In response, the lead tank attempted to drive around the man, but the man repeatedly stepped into the path of the tank in the show of nonviolent action. After repeatedly attempting to go around, the lead tank stopped its engines and the armored vehicles behind it followed suit. There was a short pause in the man and the tanks having reached a quiet, still impasse, which is like such a beautiful like gesture of just like standing in front of the tanks.
I just am stressed. I feel like they like tortured him.
So, having successfully brought the column to a halt, the man climbed up onto the hull of the buttoned-up lead tank, and after briefly stopping at the driver's hatch, he appeared in video footage of the incident to call into various parts of the tank's turret. He then climbed atop the turret and seemed to have a short conversation with a crew member at the gunner's hatch. After ending the conversation, the man descended from the tank. The tank commander briefly emerged from his hatch, and the tanks restarted their engines, ready to continue on. At that point, the man, who was still standing within a meter or two from the side of the lead tank, leapt in front of the vehicles once again and quickly reestablished the tank man standoff. Fucking brave. So, who is this man?
Yeah, who is this man?
We don't know. So little is known publicly about him.
I hope he's okay.
Or that, I don't know if he is, or that of the commander of the lead tank. Shortly after the incident, a British tabloid, Sunday Express, named him as Wang Weilian, a 19-year-old student who was later charged with political hooliganism and, quote, attempting to subvert members of the People's Liberation Army. This was rejected by the communists. They were like, that's not him.
Of course it was.
And they reported they could not find the man.
I feel like that's not true.
Yeah, and a Human Rights Watch was like, that's not true.
I don't believe them even for a second.
So one party member was quoted as saying, "We can't find him. We got his name from journalists. We have checked through computers, but we can't find him among the dead or among those in prison." Which is like so depressing.
That means he's alive. I feel like they're like, we didn't do anything.
Well, I feel like it's actually really complicated because it's like, you shouldn't publish the name of that guy. Like, if they're like protesting political censorship, like you should freaking protect
them. Yeah.
Which is actually why, to spin this in a positive way, maybe I should say this for the end, but it's like, that is kind of good that we don't know who it is, because then he could have continued his life on. But that's probably unlikely.
Yeah, dude. China, how long have they been in this like state?
Long time. I mean, they're still communists.
Yeah.
Since I'll tell you.
I mean, we already established neither of us know Chinese history.
I believe like since the the party was founded in the 1920s, and they took over in 1949. It was after World War II. It's crazy. It's just like, why don't they teach us in school?
Yeah, like
I feel so important to know.
You know what? I would bet, this is a very cynical view, I would bet it probably has something to do with how much the US relies on China for like exports. Yeah. And that it's like, I feel like it's one of those things where like everyone's like, no, they shouldn't be doing that. That's like so bad. But then like we do a ton of business. And I know that I am not claiming to know very much about that stuff. I know enough that I know that it's infinitely more complicated and there's lots of layers of nuance as to like the, I don't know, strategy behind that or whatever. But like, I would imagine that part of it is probably the fact that either like we're losing and they don't want like the perception of us being like, man, the states are losers. Yeah. Coupled with the fact that maybe they don't want to piss off China by painting them as bad guys and teaching all of their youth that like China's bad. Yeah. Because they want to like keep doing like trading with them and keeping that option open. That would be my guess.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's probably it. And it's interesting because to study in the US, like if you're from China, I just know this because there's a lot of Chinese students in my program, like your parents have to make a certain amount of money. Mm-hmm. So like the Chinese people that we interact with are like not the general population. Yeah. You know?
Totally.
It's just like, it's nuts. I really want to go to China. I want to see what's going on.
Has Alex been to China? I can't remember. Alex has been to a lot of Asian countries. I've never been to China. Oh. Japan was the first time that I've been to Asia. Oh. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's really interesting. It's like very eye-opening to realize that places like North Korea and like China exist. I just feel so sheltered, you know?
Yeah.
Because I feel like I cannot even fathom like a situation where I don't have like freedom of speech or like freedom to like just like voice my displeasures.
Yeah.
And just like being so policed, and that's just like such a real reality for so many people.
Yeah.
I get what you meant by heavy now.
Yeah. Well, so there's a few more statements about the incident.
Mm-hmm.
It's obviously like not talked about, but
yeah.
The government publicly denounced Tank Man as a scoundrel on state television. And in 1990, Barbara Walters, the frickin' gal,
mm-hmm.
she pressed the general secretary at the time of China, Jiang Zemin, and asked what became of the man. And he stated, quote, "I can't confirm whether this young man you mentioned was arrested or not." And then he replied in English. He said that first part through interpreter. He says, "I think never killed. The government," that's what he said, which is so creepy.
But wait, why is it creepy? Because he was trying to say the government never killed him, he thinks?
No, he says, "I can't confirm whether the young man you mentioned was arrested or not," and then replied in English, quote, "I think never killed." He said that in English, meaning like it for some reason like confirms that they're like, yeah, we just like kill people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think maybe he was like, oh, they already know.
The government like kind of spinned it when they would have to talk about it and said they're like, oh, the incident showed the humanity of the country's military because they didn't run the guy over. Oh, for some reason I skipped over. Basically 2 people in wearing blue uniforms ran out from the crowd and pulled him away, and that's how it ended. I didn't say that because it was like a standoff.
Yeah. Oh, so they totally oh my gosh, it's not he left and ran away like
yeah.
How stupid did they think we are? Interesting.
And a little video games moment, Sid.
Hey, I've heard of those.
On August 20th, 2020, a trailer for Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War showed footage of Tank Man on video platforms in China like Bilibili.
I think that might be their YouTube.
The segment of the trailer was replaced with a black screen. And
that's the most recent Call of Duty.
And the next day, Activision Blizzard released a shorter version of the trailer that also didn't include the scene. And on June 4th, 2021, recently, the 32nd anniversary of the massacre, searches for the Tank Man image and videos were censored by Microsoft's Bing search engine worldwide. Hours after Microsoft acknowledged the issue, the search returned only pictures of tanks elsewhere in the world. Search engines that license result from Microsoft, such as DuckDuckGo and Yahoo, face similar issues. Microsoft said the issue was, quote, due to an accidental human error.
So that was
I think that's freaking sus.
I think that was the article that I was sent was about when that was happening and when everyone was like, what the fuck? Like, why can't we see this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that just like further points to like, I know that I was just like, wow, our government's great. They're not killing all of us, you know, but like, I think it's also just like so much collusion. Do you know what I mean?
Collusion.
Like, I even look at what was it? Just I don't know. Tell me if you think this is like a similar thing, but like how much of a grip like China has on the US. Like we feel like it's separate, but like just an influence, like the fact that like Activision changed that trailer, these big corporations being like, hey, you gotta keep China happy, you can't say that.
Yeah, I mean, quickly going to USC, like the Hollywood school, I literally was told to like research like what is and isn't allowed in like Chinese culture when writing scripts.
Wow,
because
interesting.
Of how the film industry, the market is geared to China now. Yeah. It's like every movie, you don't really care about domestic box office anymore.
Wow.
Like it's
interesting.
for the Chinese market because they like, it's a huge market. And surprisingly, like Star Wars doesn't do well there because of the storyline. It gets censored a lot because of like the rebellion.
Interesting.
But yeah, that's why I think Marvel movies do really well there. I don't know why. This is like, again, don't quote me on this, but I just know that like most big budget movies are tailored to being not censored in China.
Yeah.
And so they're sensitive about that. And it's it's interesting.
That's interesting. Is it because there's so many people in China and so automatically like the box office number, like they're making more money, or is
they have like theater going is way bigger there than it is here now.
Interesting. That's fascinating because like, the friend whose parent is a professor there, he does stuff in China. And I feel like,
oh yeah, they have a Chinese branch of USC Film School.
Yeah, he works in that branch. But I also just read something where one of the Sprouse brothers, like Cole, it must have been Cole, because I don't even remember the other guy's name. Dylan?
Yeah.
One of them learned Mandarin in like 6 months to like star in some Chinese film.
Crazy.
As like the American Prince or something.
It's like Drake Bell in Mexico.
Yeah.
That's a whole other story.
But yeah, fuck, dude.
Anyways, that's Tiananmen Square. I'll probably do some more Chinese topics.
Yeah, I would love
just because of that. That was documentary was beautiful.
That was a really good distillation of.
Oh my god, thank you.
It. Like I feel like it like you gave like enough that's wow.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to watch that documentary now.
Yeah, I'll
have to find it. Cool. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Don't forget new episodes every Friday. And we have an image guide going up. So if you want to see the Tiananmen Square image, that'll definitely be on there, as well as some Lisa Frank stuff. Maybe even some Betsy Johnson. I don't know.
Random.
And then we have our YouTube videos going up every week. YouTube like video podcasts. YouTube.com/shutupkeepgoing. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Fridays. Bye.